So our next speaker is Heather Ruland. She's the VP of Publisher Development at SIPEX. Apparently we're no longer allowed to say the Stanford Intellectual Property Exchange, because now it's just SIPEX. And that is all about exploring the nexus of academic publishing, library technology, and the future of e-learning. Prior to SIPEX, actually I got to know her well when she was working at Springer, and also Heather is very active in a lot of the industry groups, such as SSP and Clocks and a whole bunch of other ones that you can read in her bio. So today's talk, Heather's going to tell us about her experience with wearable computing, in particular Google Glass, and how it relates to data creation and education.
Great.
Over to you.
Thanks so much, Howard, and thank you for asking me to come and speak today. I'm very honored. I thought I'd just start with a little bit of background on wearable computers. And just because you might have a computer, on or near your body or your phone in your pocket, doesn't, by most definitions, make it a wearable computer. Wearable computers, as originally intended, were meant to be different from other computers in that they're not meant to interrupt you, but basically to complement what you're doing with things like watching or monitoring your mood, one that's not going to take your attention, but that's supposed to sort of increase your attention towards things that are important to you, and something that basically kind of takes care of itself. So there's a lot of movement in this space recently, and I didn't put some of the more recent things that have been announced, like computerized wigs and teeth that can tell what you've eaten and how your health is. Mainly focused on things I thought people might possibly consider using or wearing, like the watches, the Samsung Gear, or the Pebble watch, some of the exercise bands that are out, Fitbit, and the Nike Fuel. But most of the conversation today will really be about Google Glass. And there's a lot of use cases out there for wearable computing. And I kind of grouped them. As I was listing them, the list was getting longer and longer, so I tried to kind of group them together. And really, I think that education, enrichment, gaming, entertainment space is a spectrum, and lots of possibilities for content creation and consumption in that area. The opportunity to create a sort of video blog of what you might be doing at any given time. Some of people have called it glogging. Probably more pertinent to what I would be interested in is the idea that you could assist your memory. Who is this person and what was that question I needed to ask them? So to use Evernote, for example, to record little memos to yourself. Of course, health and sensory data is a big focus for development now, as well as social and communication aspects. Going a little bit further, the safety, security, policing, military conglomerate. I was reading just a few days ago about a police department in Georgia that's experimenting with putting Google Glass on their officers when they're out on patrol. There's some lovely pictures online of them actually shooting their guns off at the firing range with the Google Glass on. But somewhat controversially, apparently they also wear them when they're driving, which brings up other complications about the use of wearable computing. Navigation and enhancement is a pretty obvious use case for something that's with you all the time, and a lot of implications around marketing and purchasing. I think we coincide nicely with the talks this morning about geolocation and geofencing, the opportunity for a business to send you a coupon in your face while you're in the store, rather than something you realize you got when you got home and you didn't actually take your phone out in that store. The possibilities for augmented, annotated, or diminished reality. So I think we've probably heard of augmented reality. Diminished reality would offer the possibility for you to block out ads in the physical space to actually enable you to focus your attention more on the things around you, like the people or the beautiful scenery. So the possibility to see more, but also the possibility to see less. A little bit of background on wearable computers, because some of the images and stuff were frankly pretty hilarious. I think probably the most famous folks in the space are Edward Thorpe and Claude Shannon, who invented that little device in the shoe up in the upper corner so they could do card counting in the casinos. Kind of a nice use for the first wearable computer. Steve Mann is perhaps more famous for documenting years and years of his life, taking extensive notes on it and be able to pull up those notes at a moment's notice. and lots of work done primarily at MIT and Columbia University in the 90s. There wasn't a lot of developments in the 2000s in the wearable computer space, but a lot of the back end necessary to actually make wearable computers feasible today was proceeding at a sort of record pace. So advances in processors and memory, battery size and capacity, sharpness, thickness of screens and displays, as well as the connectivity that we have access to today, whether it's through a service provider, whether it's wireless. And so today we find ourselves with a number of devices that can communicate to us and show us information and data via these mechanisms. As for what's coming tomorrow, there's a number of companies already working on contact lenses that can contain sensors and display information, in-body devices that would monitor health conditions, and really including tags and such in everyday items that we use that will allow us to find that missing soccer cleat that's under the bed. And the kids can tell me, I don't know where it is, Mom, and I can tap on my glasses and say, it's up under the bed in your room, you better go get it. But as I said, mostly I'll focus on Google Glass. That's what I know first and foremost. So I entered a contest in February last year, which gave you the possibility to submit either via Twitter or via Google+, what you would do if you had Glass. So I did check with my husband before I entered this contest, and he said, well, what happens if you win? And I said, well, I have to actually purchase the device. And I said, but don't worry, I'm never going to win, so you don't need to worry about that. I did pick up the device in June. There were 8,000 explorers picked. We were added to the 2,000 developers who had Glass. I've got just some stats up there about it. It has undergone monthly software updates since I've had it, and I would say it does many more things, and it's much less buggy than it was over the summer. It's not quite ready for prime time yet, but I think it's getting there. The Glass Developers Kit was just opened in November, so I think now that apps are available for us through Google Play, that's just going to take off, and I've got some slides towards the end about some of those apps. Glass 2 was recently announced, and we're going to have the opportunity to trade in our Glass 1 or keep them, but probably going to trade mine in soon. And then the commercial release is set for 2014, and I don't know anything more about that than you do, but I would probably say not January, given that I think it's not quite ready yet, but maybe the first quarter. I wanted just to include some screenshots, since I wasn't able to do any screen sharing with you today. Some of the ways that you can actually just get information about your environment. If you have an Android phone and you use Google Now, the cards are very similar to what you might receive. Traffic, it learns your route to get to work. Information on the transit system. And transit directions, I think, is a fantastic use case, particularly if you're in a town that you don't know. Obviously, information on the weather. You can communicate with friends about what you're doing. And if you're a sports fan, and we did try this out when we were in Boston, David Smith wanted to know what the score was for his precious Cardinals, and we were able to get the information right like that. So how will Google Glass potentially affect teaching and learning? There's a lot, somewhat we're limited by who was able to make the case to Google to get these glasses, but there's a lot of talk about what's happening in the medical space. Whether it would be possible to do, and people are doing it already, a consultation with a doctor who's not present but can see through your eyes and hear the patient himself is a fantastic thing to ponder. The glass has been used in operations. There's some number of apps that are being developed to communicate better with physicians. Instruction, being able to now show hundreds of students a close-up procedure that you wouldn't have been able to do easily another way. Engineering and architecture, anything that's going to involve underlying schematics or different layers that you want to sort through. If you're a tech, being able to come into a building and actually look into the walls and see where things are, a fantastic advantage. Journalism, and I was thinking citizen science as we were talking. Lots of data can be collected by citizens who want to make that type of contribution. And really anything that requires field work, whether it's archaeology or forensics, anything that having a hands-free record of what you were doing would be a benefit. There's a lot of folks looking at apps in the agriculture space, being able to look out over your fields and actually see what test, probably herbicide or something had been applied in a certain area, or what the next step was to happen in that sort of the process. A lot of observations and information taking place in zoos, psychology in terms of observation of behavior, fantastic things, and of course gathering data in behavioral sciences as well. In the area of accessibility, there's a lot happening at the moment. The text-to-speech, all the text-to-speech needs a little bit of work still, but there's a possibility that users with an audio impairment could actually have the device show them what you're saying to them, detecting your speech, which is pretty interesting. Audio navigation for those with visual impairments, object recognition, it was mentioned already today, the Mechanical Turk, folks wearing glass and who can't see saying, what is this I'm looking at? And a number of folks collaborating online to let them know what that is. And also work for folks on the autism spectrum, being able to better detect emotional cues and the like in the environment around them. So in terms of implications for publishers, obviously a lot of these things are kind of far out there in the future potentially, but I think content will be created and content will be consumed through wearable computing devices. There's been a few mentions already today of location awareness. I've got an app as I walk around any city, London, Charleston, New York, it pops up information about local attractions you're standing in front of. When I was in Charleston, South Carolina a few weeks ago, as I was walking around the town, it was showing me pictures of destruction after the Civil War. This is what this location looked like in 1865. And as a historian, I thought that was like fantastic. Again, anything that's visual and involves images, which is increasingly a part of what we're looking at, protocols, anything in the lab where you want to have your hands free, the opportunity to have supplemental data appear through glass. But this is not without its concerns, of course. A lot of implications around privacy. Lots of things that you do with glass you can also do currently with your smartphone. And I think we all remember when phones started to have cameras on them and there was a lot more sensitivity than there is now about having a phone out, in a locker room or sort of public space. So I think some of that, it's just going to, be how comfortable we get, with the technology. But it's also privacy of the data that you're collecting and sending out, and perhaps what's being collected about you. The social implications and norms around this are obviously still evolving. Ordinarily, if I'm giving a talk, I would not be wearing these because I personally think that's rude, but since the talk's on the subject, I thought it made sense. Whether having another screen that's in front of us all the time is going to have a neurological implant. If I hear my husband tell the kids one more time that their brains are rotten, from the video games, I'll be a rich woman. And even concern around copyright for content that's actually created through glass. Just wanted to show you a couple of the apps. The WordLens app, it's available already for phones. I don't know if any of you have ever used it for a phone. It's a translation app. It only works on Android phones, so I can't demo it here, but it's amazing. So it works with 5 languages now, and basically what you do is you instruct the glass to make a translation. And you look at a sign or a piece of text, and you, through optical character recognition, then it will translate it. So you can see on the right, the background, if you're looking at a sign with a white background and black text, it will change the language you're seeing, but keep the formatting in the background the same. So maybe it's not so clear on this one, but if you're looking at a black sign with white letters or a red sign, it will try to keep the fonts and the colors. So really when you use the app, it looks like the words just change into your own language before your eyes, like a miracle. Field trip, I mentioned that. So if you are near an event or anything of historical significance, you can get more information on it. Fantastic if you're sort of a tourist addict like I am. And again, here's a picture, there's an older picture juxtaposed with the current scene. And if you're a sports fan, there is an app called Blue, which will enable you to get real-time data on the players, including their stats, updates on the game. So for many people who want to take their second screen with them to sports because they want to kind of simulate what they could be doing at home there, it's a great way to get information that way. So what about the promise of Google Glass? It's still probably too early to say, but the people who I've showed it to seem to think it's pretty cool, and I do as well. The immediacy between your intention and your action, being able to reach up and just take a picture or a video when you want to. I'm now trying to take pictures with my regular sunglasses. It's kind of sad. But I will say I caught my son's in the park home run a few weeks ago. I would not have caught that if I was depending on recording on my phone. So that alone was probably worth it. It works with QR codes, probably the first interesting use of QR codes that I've been able to think of. Think about how we struggle with things like IKEA furniture. You have to put down what you're doing, and here's the directions. Oh, no, those are the French directions. Where am I? I'm starting over again. If every piece of IKEA furniture came with a QR code with instructions on how to put it together, hands-free, it could walk you through step by step, is this the right piece, and the like. Live streaming, I want to be able to walk down the street in London, and I can do this with a video call and have my parents see what I'm seeing. I can wear these glasses to one of the children's concerts or sports, and my parents can be there even though they live in another state. In the space of vision enhancement and motion detection, you could potentially add on the hardware to be able to use night vision or infrared or something like that. That would be vision enhancement. And I think it's really going to fit in with the Internet of Everything, and as I read just in the recent issue of Computer World, the era of ambient everything, where we're connected to the things around us in a way that simply wasn't possible before. So I'll end with that, but I will say those of you who know me won't be surprised to think that I will be at the pub later. And if you want to try on glass, be my guest. I'm happy to let you. And thank you again.
So we have a few minutes for questions for Heather. Anyone? David?
Actually, interested now you've been wearing it for a while. Is it something that still sits in your vision and you are conscious of, or has it faded away? How has it been in terms of just sitting there in your environment on a regular basis?
Well, I should say I don't wear them around my house every day. I work at home, and frankly, my house is not that interesting. But I will take them out, if we're going, we went on vacation or one of the sports events, or if we're going for a party or something. So I'm not one of the users that's been wearing them 24 hours, but I would say you get used to them pretty quickly, not in a few minutes, but pretty quickly. When they're sleeping, which they've been sleeping since I've been up here, they're completely transparent. And if you get a message or something, you hear a chime, and you can decide whether you want to act upon that and see it. The only time they wake up, unless not prompted, is if you get a telephone call. You can see who's calling. And so I find they're a lot less distracting than I would be, if I were relying on my phone for that type of information. The only kind of weird thing I've noticed is if I've been wearing them for a while and I don't have them on, I feel like that screen should be there. I look for it. I sometimes feel like there's a ghost image of it hovering, but pretty quick you accommodate it to your daily life.
All right, thanks. We have time for one last question, if anyone has a question. Oh.
Heather, I think there's an ethical dimension that you sort of touched on there, and you seem to have developed your own kind of personal ethical code around when you would or wouldn't use glass. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, out in California, especially the area around the Bay where there are people who are seen with these glasses a lot more frequently, they're kind of frowned upon, and the people who wear them are called glass holes. So I sort of operate on the philosophy that, I really don't want to be, one of those people. So while they're not a distraction for me, I find that they can be a distraction for the person that I'm speaking with. So if I'm in a conversation or in a meeting, I usually have them up here. Maybe you notice me walking around with them, on my head. So I personally, if anybody feels, at all, threatened, I'll take them off, turn them off, whatever it is. I don't want to be, invasive like that. But I think that the lines are going to be a little bit blurred when they come out with the prescription version early next year. It's one thing to ask somebody to take off glasses that they don't really need to see. It's another thing if somebody's got their prescription glasses on and this is integrated with that, to ask them to take off those glasses. So I am curious to kind of see what happens in that space. But I think your true personality will probably try to come through. If you're going to be a jerk, you're going to be a jerk in everything you do. And if you're hoping not to be, you'll at least aspire to that. Maybe, not achieve it. But it's definitely an evolving social etiquette.
I'd like to thank both of our speakers.